Fair to say a lot's happened this week. You've got Man City's fourth loss in a row in all competitions. You've got Arsenal having their title hopes crushed effectively by Chelsea. You've got the relegation fight being wide open with Palace in there, the team that I support. You've also got Southampton, Wolves, Ipswich, Leicester, Everton being thrown in there as well. Massive talking points this week for Premier League Game Week 11. Welcome back to the Woodwork. So, hello everyone, welcome back to the Woodwork. Today is the review for Premier League Game Week 11. I did this video a couple of weeks ago for Premier League Game Week 8 or 9. It was a very good video to make, and I'm making this one today, so I can't wait to make this. Just like before, we're going to go from the most important to the least important games to review, with one talking point per team this game week. Now, obviously, if I do cover your team later on in the video, don't be offended. You were just in a less important game, in my opinion. So we're going to start with the title race. First of all, let's talk about Manchester City. I cannot believe they lost to Brighton, Palace's rivals. Full-time Brighton 2, Manchester City 1. I think it's only fair that we talk about Brighton first, as much as I don't really want to. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're level on points with third place, even though they are sixth in the league in the Europa League spots. Their highest finish a couple of seasons ago. But what is going on at Brighton? Like, do you know what I mean? It was an amazing comeback, but can they keep this form up under Fabian Hürzeler? Was he underrated at the start of the season is what I'm trying to say for Brighton's talking point. I think we're all guilty of this one. I think it's quite an easy talking point. You know, he's done really well with Brighton, how he's nurtured a couple of their players. You know, get O'Reilly getting his goal to give Brighton the win as well. What a moment for him, and what a moment for Brighton coming back from a goal down to win against the champions. In terms of Manchester City, what is going on? 4 losses in a row in all competitions. They lost to Spurs in the Carabao Cup last 16. Then they lost against Bournemouth in the Premier League. Then they lost to Sporting Lisbon in the Champions League. And now Brighton again in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? Like, is Rodri that much of a miss? That's the talking point. Is Rodri that much of a miss for Manchester City? I didn't think he would be, but Man City are really struggling, and I don't really know why. What do you guys think? Next up, we've got the last Premier League game before the international break, which happened at 4:30 yesterday. Chelsea 1, Arsenal 1. Now, for Chelsea, I've not seen much of Pedro Neto since they signed him in the summer. But what a strike to make it 1-1. I genuinely thought when Martinelli put Arsenal 1-0 up, I genuinely thought that they would push on and get a second and Chelsea would become a little bit deflated. But then again, I thought, well, Chelsea won 8-0 against, all right, it was a team from Armenia in FC Noah in the Conference League, but that would have filled them with confidence. And Pedro Neto showed that confidence with that strike. To just hit it 25 yards out straight in the bottom corner, Raya was not expecting it. It caught him way off guard, because it wasn't even that far in the corner, to be honest. I think it was savable if Raya was in the correct position. But still, what a strike from Pedro Neto, and a brilliant point for Chelsea. Now, for Arsenal, that draw puts them at 4th in the Premier League with 19 points. But, you know, 19 points covers 3rd to 6th, I believe. So, you know, it's not great. It's not been a great start to the season for Arsenal. Now, I know in the first half, Chelsea right back Malo Gusto missed an absolute sitter. But because of the pressure that was on that chance in the 90th minute for Arsenal to win the game, and, you know, what that would have meant if Trossard scuffed it, which he did, I think that Trossard miss was worse than Gusto's. That's my talking point for Arsenal. You know, a lot of our Arsenal fans aren't massive fans of Trossard now, and after seeing the game back, I can see why. He should be scoring that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't get why he's not, to be honest. He's trying to play it across to Havertz. I think he doesn't know that he's as close to the goal as he is, but he should look up. And that was a massive mistake. So, let's talk about the team that are top of the Premier League. Liverpool 2, Aston Villa 0. Massive, massive win for Liverpool at Anfield on Saturday night. Now, my talking point for Liverpool is quite basic. Will they win the Premier League of Arne Slot's first time of asking? I think that'll be the first time it's happened since Antonio Conte with Chelsea back in 2016-17, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But, you know, Liverpool have been playing so well, and their only defeat came at home to Nottingham Forest, who have proven to actually be a very, very good team this season. We all thought that was a very bad performance from Liverpool, but Forest have actually done really well this season. So for that to be Liverpool's only loss of the season, they've started really, really well. And can they keep it up with the quality they've got? I think they might. I really do think they might. In terms of Aston Villa, I think 2-0 away at Anfield is a respectable scoreline. I was going to say that my talking point is the Champions League schedule catching up with Aston Villa, but they did play a Champions League side in the league on Saturday, so it's probably unfair to ask that question. But the question I will ask is, should Aston Villa have had a penalty? I really do think they should have had a penalty. I think it was Konate on Watkins, wasn't it? I think that's a foul. I think that's a penalty, and I think Villa would have had the chance to go level. You know, Konate gets none of the ball, lunges into Watkins, and he goes down, and I do think Villa should have had the penalty. I think it went to VAR and they said no. I don't get the rules with VAR anymore, to be honest with you. Right, let's move on to the relegation battle. A massive win for Ipswich Town, their first Premier League win since the 2002 season, with it finishing Tottenham 1, Ipswich Town 2. What a win for Ipswich. My talking point for Tottenham is that they're so inconsistent. They are massively inconsistent. They lost to Crystal Palace towards the end of October. Then they beat Manchester City right at the very end of October, actually, in the Carabao Cup. Then they win 4-1 at home to Aston Villa in the league, in a brilliant, brilliant performance, especially in the second half from Tottenham. Then they go and lose 3-2 to Galatasaray in the Europa League, and then lose to Ipswich in the Prem. So inconsistent, and I don't know how it can be fixed. They're 10th in the league. They're massively underperforming in the Premier League right now. But with how tight the top half is from 3rd to 10th, a couple of Tottenham wins, they will go back up there. But I don't think they will. I mean, their next game's away at Manchester City in a massive game for Man City, as mentioned before. They've lost 4 games in a row in all competitions. So, you know, that's going to be a massive game in 2 weeks' time. Again, for Ipswich, my talking point is quite basic, but can Ipswich stay up? You know, they wait till November to win a game. It reminds me a lot of Sheffield United last season, but they've got goals in them, Ipswich Town. It's defending. You know, they scored 3 at Brentford, 2 against Tottenham when they managed to defend really well. You know, they'd scored twice against Aston Villa, a Champions League side. They scored at home against Fulham, unlike Palace. We'll get onto that later on. But massive for Ipswich. It pulls them out of the relegation zone because they've drawn 5 games. It was their first wins. They're now on, I believe, 8 points. Massive for Kieran McKenna's side. Congrats to them. Next up, we've got a very important game for the bottom 2 sides in the Premier League between Wolves and Southampton. And it finished Wolves 2, Southampton 0. Now, Wolves, I've got one talking point and one talking point only, except for it being your first win of the season. Keep Matheus Cunha fit at all costs. Do it. Honestly, because with Palace, we've struggled with keeping our best players fit. Eze, Wharton and Ketia, all out injured, and it's come back to bite us. But for Wolves, keeping Cunha fit, what a goal to make it 2-0 and to start the game really well as well. It was just a really good professional performance from Wolves. I watched that game back and you wouldn't think that Wolves were in any kind of trouble, to be honest with you. But was that down to Southampton making them look good? Let's talk about Southampton. Is it time for Southampton to be concerned again? You know, they got their first win of the season against Everton a week ago, and I thought that they would push on from that at Wolves. But they crumbled against Wolves away from home. Maybe if it was at St Mary's, it might have been a different story. But losing to a relegation rival like that, it's not promising. So is it time to get concerned for Southampton again? And unfortunately, we've got the other game with a team that's now in the bottom 3. Crystal Palace 0, Fulham 2. Not good as far as Palace are concerned. Again, I'm not going to... Obviously, people know that I do my own Palace content. So go and watch my own channel, Palace by Mason, if you want to see a more in-depth review of the game. But I'm worried about Palace. And is it time for Palace to get worried is my talking point here. Because, you know, we played 6 defenders against Fulham with Mark Gahey in midfield, a back 3 of Klein, Lacroix and Chalobah with wing backs of Mitchell and Munoz. Our only attacking outlets were Justin Devaney, people are wondering who he is. Justin Devaney is a Northern Ireland under-21 international and our youth team captain. And because we're so struggling in terms of midfield numbers, with Jefferson Lerma out injured, Adam Wharton injured, Will Hughes being suspended, we could only play him and Mark Gay in midfield. Then attacking midfielder-wise, we had Ismail Assar and Daichi Kamada and Mateta. Actually, I'm going to change my talking point. I don't want it to keep being, are we struggling? Who is this team struggling? Is it time to get concerned? How do you rate Daichi Kamada is going to be my talking point for Palace, because they signed him from Lazio on a free to try and replace Michael Elise, and as far as I'm concerned, it has not worked. Can't string a 5-yard pass together, and that's me trying to be, respectful, if I can try to be. But I think the lineup just showed how poor the transfer window was. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say about Palace. I don't want it to be a Palace video. Again, with Fulham, I've got one talking point. Emil Smith-Rowe. I'm just going to put it as that. Emil Smith-Rowe. I really underrated Fulham at the start of the season, and I thought that they were going to drop off under Marco Silva. Seeing as how long Marco Silva's actually been in the job at Fulham, I didn't realise that he was there since pretty much COVID-19. Do you know what I mean? And they showed against Palace the quality and attack that they possess. Iwobi, Smith-Rowe was having the time of his life out there. Raul Jimenez, what a week Harry Wilson's had. When Crystal Palace are bringing on Agbenone and Kapora, they're bringing on Adama Traore. It was a brilliant showing from Fulham and much deserved win. And they're in 6th or 7th place. Brilliant for Fulham. Now, Nottingham Forest 1, Newcastle 3. Now, probably George, the host of the Woodwork podcast, isn't too happy with the result, but they've had a very good start to the season, Nottingham Forest. But one thing I can pick out is that they couldn't really deal with Newcastle's ruthless attack, especially in that second half. Is that something to be concerned about, I think? Is Newcastle's attack something to be concerned about? Not necessarily Newcastle's attack, but, their defending overall from Forest. Have they been tested enough this season? Is this why they're right up there in the Premier League table? Now, I don't think it's something to be concerned about, because I think outside of the top 6, outside the big 6, I think Newcastle actually have one of the strongest attacks in the Premier League, bar your big teams. They paid a lot of money for them, so obviously they're going to turn up and test you. And I think it was an off day for Nottingham Forest, but if you think otherwise, comment below. My talking point for Newcastle, can they push higher? Can they push higher in the Premier League table? They're 8th, and after seeing their performance against Forest, I think they have the abilities to get higher in that Premier League table. They are ruthless going forward. So can Newcastle push higher? A goal fest in West London. Brentford 3, Bournemouth 2. Sort of a battle of the mid-table teams after this. Brentford are 11th and Bournemouth 12th. For Brentford, brilliant comeback yet again. Obviously, we had the comeback against Ipswich a couple of weeks ago where they went 2-0 down and still managed to win the game in the 90-odd minute. Wasn't as dramatic against Bournemouth because they didn't go 2 goals down, but it was still a brilliant comeback from Brentford. And a bit like the Newcastle talking point, I suppose, can they push on to potentially the European spots or even the top half of the Premier League table? For Bournemouth, I'm picking out one player, and that's their goalkeeper, Kepa Arrizabalaga. I think for Brentford's equaliser, it's poor goalkeeping. Kepa, has to cover his near post. I think, it's not even gone through Kepa's legs. It's not even an outstanding finish from Damsgaard. It's poor goalkeeping from Kepa, I must say. And obviously, I wouldn't do much of a better job. But I think if he saves that, which he should, it's a different outcome for Bournemouth entirely. Next up, the last game that happened on Sunday, Manchester United 3, Leicester City 0. Ruud van Nistelrooy's last game as interim manager of Manchester United since Erik ten Hag was sacked a week or so ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago actually now. My talking point for Manchester United is, should Ruud van Nistelrooy have a role behind the scenes at Manchester United? Not necessarily manager, because obviously Ruben Amorim is coming in as the Manchester United manager, but you know what I mean? Should you have a job behind the scenes, maybe on the coaching staff or, just on the board somewhere? Because I think he's done really well as interim. You know, he got the 4-2 win against Leicester in the Carabao Cup. He got the win against PAOK in the Europa League. Then he got the win against Leicester, and he drew against Chelsea at home as well, a Chelsea team who have been playing really well this season so far. So, you know, it's not the most impressive of performances and the most impressive results against the most impressive teams. But I think Van Nistelrooy has done well to steady the ship, considering the mess that Manchester United were left in when Erik ten Hag got sacked. For Leicester, I've got a bit of an interesting talking point for them because I couldn't really think of one. But you normally see when a smaller team plays a bigger team in, say, the League Cup, you see a response in the Premier League. Prime example, Crystal Palace. We lost in the third round of the Carabao Cup to Manchester United 3-0. We go and beat them 1-0 in the league about 3 days later because we learnt the lessons. But Leicester seem to have not learnt their lessons. They lost 4-2 at Old Trafford in the League Cup, then 3-0 in the Premier League at Old Trafford in the Premier League. It's not, you know, the most, you know, they've not had the most entertaining trips to Old Trafford. You know, so should they be disappointed is what I'm trying to say. Should they have learnt their lessons in the Carabao Cup? Because I think they really should have. And no surprise, the last game I'm talking about on Saturday, 3 o'clock, I think quite a few people have forgotten this one happened. West Ham 0, Everton 0. Obviously a goalless draw, so I was going to cover this last. Bit of a relegation battle, I suppose. Middle of the bottom half clash. The thing is, this had massive pressure on Julian Lopetegui at West Ham. And I have to ask, just like my point against West Ham for, you know, a couple of videos ago, you know, when I did it a few weeks ago for game week 9 or 8, how much pressure is on Julian Lopetegui now? You know, because I got told by a few West Ham fans that unless the result was convincing or positive in terms of the performance, then, you know, Lopetegui stays in the job. So, is Lopetegui out? Let me know. And for Everton, 2 words. Jordan Pickford. If it weren't for him, you've lost 2-3-0. Made some outstanding saves, especially from Danny Ings right at the end, 94th minute I think it was. Stunning save considering the drive was deflected as well. He tips it over the bar to keep it as a 0-0 draw. Decent result for Everton away from home at West Ham. So there we go, guys. That is the end of the review. I hope you enjoyed it for Premier League game week 11. We're in the international break now, and it's Lee Carsley's final couple of games as England interim boss. So I'm going to do a preview for the game against Greece because it actually is a massive game considering how they beat us at Wembley a few weeks ago. And, you know, I think we need a couple of points to finish top of the Nations League group. And then we've got Ireland at Wembley in Lee Carsley's last game in charge, which I will be vlogging because I'm going. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that vlog, which will be coming out on Sunday night, I presume. Hope you guys liked the video. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys very, very soon. And also follow my socials, Palace Fan Mason on YouTube and TikTok as well, if you want a more in-depth review of Palace's game against Fulham, if it wasn't an in-depth review anyway. So yeah, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon.